this computer. All right. I am Andre Barnes, and this is the Freedmen Forum. What I'd like to do is discuss with this panel about a narrative that's been going around the media, and I think that's pretty destructive. There's a narrative out there that states that Black Americans are being targeted by ICE. And before I go into the reasons why I kind of jumped into this and brought all these wonderful activists onto this forum in quick fashion to quell this argument, I'm going to introduce them first. So, Antonia, I know you're a grassroots organizer from Boston, but can you tell people about your organization and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Antonia Edwards. I am the co-founder of Solidarity Community Engagement Group. We're boots and stilettos on the ground, engaging with the community, educating them on the legacy and the heritage of American freedmen. I'm also a board member of United Sons and Daughters, and that's a national organization that advocates and legislates on the behalf of American freedmen. And then Block is Black Local Organizing Committee. That's a local organization that also legislates for on the behalf of American freedmen in our community. And I'm currently working on two different bills. I sit on the City of Boston's Reparation Task Force, and we have a huge push for an Office of Freedmen Affairs bill that's going to be having a hearing on Tuesday. So we have a lot of work underneath our belt. We're really working hard to get legislation for the recognition of our people. But hi, everybody.
Fantastic. And of course, you're from Boston, Massachusetts. Dawn, can you introduce yourself, your state, and your organization?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me here. Yes, I'm really excited about what's going on in Massachusetts and Boston. I'm Dawn Page with Concerned Black American Citizens. We've been around since 2019 and started as a small organizing circle of grassroots organizations fighting for reparations and morphed into technical assistance and really trying to push out the fundamentals of organizing and power building, and then another elevation or evolution into a fiscal sponsor for grassroots organizations. So we try to increase the access to capital through our fiscal sponsorship. But Concerned Black American Citizens is concerned with reestablishing the economic development, the restoration of the American freedman family. And so we push policies for that as well. I can only hope that we can get, as far as they are in Boston or even in California right now. But it's all about recognition and repair. If we can't see you, we can't repair you. And so that is our fight, to be recognized by the federal government and our legislators at the state and local levels as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And you're from North Carolina, Durham,
Yes,
North
I
Carolina.
am. And I'm also connected to city government now. So I feel like I know now more than ever what it is freedmen are up against and how it is we go about achieving restitution.
Fantastic. And Consuelo, can you please introduce yourself, your organization, and where you're from?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am Consuelo Davis. I am the director of Freeman Descendants Advocacy Group. So basically, my group, we're about the mission to assist, advocate, and support Freeman descendants and progeny in various areas of need, whether it's education, environment, housing, homelessness, healthcare, social services and technology. So the holistic approach in what we in our repair, right, and seeing what is happening in our community. So we push in policy. We believe in lobbying and doing everything we need to do to make sure that we are full and whole citizens in our country. So.
Yes, thank you so much. And our last participant, Wawa, is coming out of Boston. Right now, he is tending to his child, so he'll join us a little bit later, and I'll have him introduce himself later. But right now, we're going to move on as he will be listening and engaging with us later in the forum. So the first thing I wanted to do was kind of read you a Facebook post from Mr. Brian Mullins from Chicago. Um, Brian Mullins has been an activist. He's worked on the Democrat campaign. He's worked outside of other campaigns, pushing the vote in Chicago as he was the head of the Black Americans Voters Project. And the reason I'm introducing Brian is because when I first started with Numbers USA, Brian was the first activist that I had a chance to meet and understand the organization and what was actually happening in Boston. So it's possible if I hadn't met Brian, I probably wouldn't have met a lot of you or would have met a lot of you much later. So I always give Brian his flowers because he was the first one to answer my call, take me around, show me what was going on in Chicago. We worked on a few polls together to kind of push back about what was happening and to get an idea of if people supported not having sanctuary cities policies. And we found out that many people did support changing those policies. And we ultimately did a documentary together that did very well on YouTube. We got over 100,000 views, and it's still getting views now. And we did that during the Democratic National Convention, and he introduced me to some other people that had some fiery things to say. So it was a great, it's been a great relationship with Brian. And I just want to read a couple of his posts because, as we've seen in the media, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, has made this a racial issue with ICE. Every time the president tries to take action with immigration, he's tried to racialize it. And I just kind of want to read one of Brian's quotes real fast. He said, "Since ICE has been here, about 48 Black Americans have been shot, 13 killed. No immigrants have been shot or killed. Freedmen need to tell our own story." And then it has dot, dot, dot. Well, not all y'all. And I believe that, well, not all y'all is that some of us have been bought and paid for and can't hold the responsibility of telling our story as freedmen. And if ICE has been effective in getting and deporting people and being able to detain 1,000 people in a short amount of time, I don't see how this is disrupting Black Americans, especially since all of you know that where they put Black Americans in Chicago were in Black neighborhoods first. So I wanted to give Dawn a chance to kind of respond to that and let us know what are your thoughts about this quote that that Brian Mullins put out on social media.
I think I'd like you to hear you reread that
Yeah,
quote. It was a
absolutely.
little, yeah.
Mhm. He said, since ICE has been here, about 48 Black Americans have been shot, 13 killed. No immigrants have been shot or killed. Freedmen need to tell our own story. Well, not all y'all.
Well, first off, I would say that that's a very cryptic tweet starting from the top. 48 Black people may very well have been shot since ICE has been there, but obviously it's inferring that they were possibly unalived by ICE, and so on and so forth through that tweet. And I think that's indicative of the times we're in because we are in such there's so much manipulation in the media. I don't want to sound too partisan, but I do feel like progressive liberals are really scrambling. And now more than ever, we need to stop, take a moment, read the headlines,
Yep.
look at the source, look at who's in the byline. But it is, in fact, true that over the past 10, 20 years, municipalities have systematically placed migrant workers, illegals, newcomers in cities close to urban areas where services are. We've seen here in North Carolina in the outer counties a very meticulous, systematic placement of 15% in all out counties are Latina or Hispanic. And we have had a population explosion since 2020 from approximately 280 some thousand to now 440,000 in the metro area. So where they're putting the people has a large impact on what we're seeing in the headlines today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Don. And Antonia, I know that where they're putting the people in Boston in conversations that we've had is a little bit different than some of the other places. I would like for you to speak to that and anything else that you would like to discuss on the quote that I brought
Okay,
up.
I was trying to look up the stats real quick since Don referenced the stats. So I live in the city of Boston, who our community has a makeup of divisions. We have South End, Back Bay, we have Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, which is mostly black, mostly diverse. We're like a New York or Chicago, where our cities are more diverse. It has been forever. We have Hispanics, we have Africans, we have Cape Verdeans who speak Portuguese. Um, we have now white because due to gentrification. So we're highly diverse. Um, our community would have always had a Hispanic preference. So we can't tell who's illegal or not. And you've been here and you've seen that.
Yeah.
However, what I can say is based on what we've seen through propaganda, through news, we're nothing like New York, nothing like Chicago, where they're concentrated in our communities. When they first started to bring the illegal immigrants here in buses, they went to the Cape Cod, and Cape Cod is really exclusively white.
Right.
We only had that was the first significant segregation area of Massachusetts where we weren't allowed on the beaches, and that's why we have Inkwell, our own black beach out there. Yeah, look it up. That we had our own black beach, um, and they shipped them out the next day. I don't know if you remember that story. They gave them clothes and everything. They're like, no, they can't stay here. Strategically, um, they have placed most aliens in the suburbs or in mostly Hispanic suburb communities like East Boston, Chelsea, on the outskirts of Boston. They're not considered to be suburbs, but they're on the outs. They're cities on the outskirts. So they're all over the place. But we don't have illegal immigrants camping out in our community. We don't have them like in New York, highly concentrated, creating that look of infestation that I've seen in New York and also in Chicago. We did have, again, like when they first came, a situation where they took over or they gave them our center, which I showed you when you were here, Andre, right down the street from my house is Molina Cass, and it was highly protested. And it wasn't even our mayor who did it; it was the governor. And we asked that they be removed, and they gave us a timeline. I think it was from maybe January to Memorial Day, and they were out 2 weeks before Memorial Day. You never seen them; they never came out; they never walked the streets. They had a restaurant across the street catered to them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when they left, they remodeled and renovated the property. Um, I guess to give back or what, or to basically say sorry. If that's how you want to say it. What we do find, and what I'm disturbed about the most is that our rents and our property values are really high, and
Yeah.
so housing stock is really significant here in Boston, where it's just not available. Um, you can spend $3,900 for a studio here, and that's just a shoebox. And so we have a lot of college students here that we're competing with as private, entities, um, to have a place to live. I mean, when I first came back home to take care of my mother, I could not find a place to live, literally, and that was one of my reasons for not really wanting to ever live back in Boston because when I left, I knew I couldn't afford it, and I didn't want to come back and have to do that. So with the affordable houses that are being built, most of them have a minimum income. with like 5 or 10% of subsidy. And so the residents, the natives that live here, are fighting with the immigrants to get those apartments, and they're sneakily putting them into those affordable houses. Whereas the median income for market rent is 100,000 minimum $100,000 to live in these properties, and so most of our American Freeman families can't afford that. We're already facing that. So I have seen numerous news clippings, postings of illegal immigrant families, whether they be from Haiti, which is most predominantly in our area. We do see that. We do see um, black Haitians that are being the illegal aliens that we come interface with in Mattapan. And as Hispanics, we see all these people bragging on news clips and postings. Oh, I got $30,000 rent for 2 years.
Hmm.
Um, I have a Mercedes and I need more money. Or, they're out in New Hampshire, they're out in Maine,
Yep.
which is a part of the New England territory, and they're bragging about getting free rent for 2 years and free
Yep.
electricity and stuff. And one of the things that's again most disturbing to me is that our mayor keeps poking the bear, and what I mean by the bear is Trump, where she's going back and forth with them doing press conferences, rallies, and she's like, "You're not going to tell us what to do," kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I think it's sad because she dumped $2.1 million in legal fees for them.
Yep.
Um, and we have regular citizens who can't even get legal services. I mean, they're being let out of people who are in jail are being let out because we don't have public defenders that want to fight for them because they're not getting paid. And I just think it's egregious to constantly control where our tax dollars are being paid,
That's
and
right.
especially for something that's illegal, for people who are legal, and then their benefits from our system far away anything that we could ever achieve or ever benefit from the system, whether it be food stamps for families with kids, whether it be um, rent subsidies, um, anything. I mean, these people are getting tremendous benefits from our system without being citizens. And that
Absolutely.
bothers me because we have a 400-year stretch, almost 500, of systematic and structural racism and erasure and being blocked out of having access to anything that would highly benefit us. I mean, we're raked through the coals when we go to ask for services, even
Yep.
if you worked your whole life.
And I want to go back to those numbers because you mentioned the 2 year rent. And a lot of people, when you talk about that, they're just like, that doesn't sound like it's in reality. But I want to give people some numbers so they can check it out because Governor Healy diverted $100 million of tax money, taxpayer funds, to provide illegal immigrant families with $30,000 for 2 years of rent, food, and free healthcare. So they
Yeah,
diverted that money to make sure that they receive those benefits when we've never seen anything done like that in the Black community. So Anthony, yeah, I know that we're gonna talk more. I want to make sure we give Miss Davis
sure.
a chance. Um Consuelo, can you tell us what is going on in Tennessee? And where are you located in Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville. So, I will say that Nashville is a blue city, right? Because the mayor is blue.
Yep.
However, we have Congress people because it's a red state. They are very active, right? So
Mhm.
our mayor is already under investigation
Mhm.
for supporting the illegals because we have the senators Andy Ogles and Tim Burkett, or Congress people that are already, on top of this, and they're already our state legislator as well. They are already on it, right? They
Right.
have already passed e-verify. They're already passing laws that any politician that decides that they want to give illegals money or housing or anything like that will be prosecuted. So, in Memphis, though, there's a different story going on because of those politicians in that area. And so, from what I understand in Memphis, do have cousins in Memphis, right? So yes, you'll know that their businesses have decreased. Black businesses are totally almost, compared to other businesses, are almost non-existent. You have, of course, the crime, or but at the same time, they can see the gentrification going on in their neighborhoods. And I will tell you, when I went to Memphis the last time, I was so disappointed, and I was very upset. I went into a restaurant, and it was called Soul Food or Soul, and went in, and it wasn't us. And I was out, and then I didn't see any of us even serving either.
Yeah.
So I told the friend I was with, I was like, we can't do this, right? And then I asked the young lady, the concierge, um, who owns this restaurant? And she was like, excuse me, what do you mean? I was like, who owns the restaurant? And then my girlfriend at the looked over, she's like, this, who owns the restaurant? He's a German.
Wow. Well, I think Dawn, I saw a social media post from her that there was this there were some Indian people that had a soul food restaurant and they were running it. So it's interesting. They like our food, but you're right, black businesses are disappearing. And I kind of want to give you guys a perfect example. I have a quote from a post from Whitney Davis that I want to read, and she was reading this book about the history of Houston, and it's called Asian Americans in Dixie. All right, so I'm going to read her quote, and we'll talk about it. She said, "The more I study Houston history, the more I discover the concerted effort to replace Black Americans with newly arrived ethnic groups. Keep in mind, immediately after the Civil War, Houston's population was a third Anglo, a third German, and a third emancipated slaves. All right? So, what happens is that in 1979, the hold on, let me get it. The housing authority in Houston, they decide that they're going to start helping Vietnamese refugees. So in 1979, their population in this particular neighborhood was around 5%. By 1984, that population had jumped up to 58%, and they couldn't find where the black people in that particular neighborhood even went. They left that area, they disappeared. And I'm sure that same thing is happening even now with the increased level of immigration and mass immigration that we're seeing now. So I don't know if any of you want to respond to that or if you wanted to move on to something else.
I can respond to it.
Okay.
I will say that just I've lived other places, right? So, Nashville is basically my home. I was born and raised outside of Nashville.
Yeah.
And even in my hometown, my little hometown of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I can see how these beings have infiltrated, even in my small rural town area. But also in Nashville, like there's certain developments happening in Nashville that were all Black neighborhoods. They're now gentrified. You can go near Tennessee State University, Meharry, Fisk are all in this area. It is
Hmm.
now gentrified.
Yeah.
A lot of those Black businesses, we still have the Citizens Bank there,
Yeah.
but in a matter of time, I can imagine they're not going to be able to afford the property taxes in those areas, and then
Mhm.
we'll have to leave as well.
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Go ahead, Antonia, because I'm going to add something to what you said, Consuelo.
Sure. So, as you know, when you came here and when I bring people here to show them what we're faced with, we have really no Black American freedmen businesses here. I grew up with them existing, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And what I advocate for is we have a flatness of blackness here, where there is Black presence. However, most of them are from different countries. So you'll have West Indian restaurants, you'll have African food. In my area where I live at is highly Somalian businesses, but we really don't have any American Freedmen businesses in close proximity to me. My godfather's barbershop is across the street. He's Freedman. And then the bookstore in Nubian Square is Freedman. But other than that, there is no Freedman business. So we do have people cosplaying as being soul food and it's Indian or it's another ethnicity. Um, what your question was asking was how are we affected by that when ICE comes in? And I'm going to say we're not. Um, we know that if I'm saying they come into our community because they have place in my community, we may be inconvenienced. But I haven't heard of any story in the city of Boston, on the outskirts, or in Massachusetts where Black families have been inconvenienced, affected, zip tied, woken up in the middle of the morning, like I heard in Chicago, with this happening. And that was a housing project. And I think that from what I understood, they were doing a sweep. And most of the time, there's raids, they do them between 1 and 5 o'clock in the morning because they want to make sure people are asleep. And I think that in Chicago was a gang affiliation
Yes.
as well too. So that was a risk of safety. But Wawa could probably, if he, I know he's feeding his son, can tell you, I've never heard of any black persons of any ethnicity, but even American freedmen being affected by any ICE um, deportation processes here in the city of Boston or any surrounding towns or cities. Um, and the effect that it has on us going back to the businesses and stuff is one of the things that I complain about is we're more Hispanic than we are, I think, any other ethnicity. So you'll have 5 liquor stores in close proximity to me, and they're all Hispanic. If you go from where I live, as I took you up to Mattapan, everything's mostly Hispanic. Um, and so we don't get to see us and our culture being reflected in our community. And so it leaves a kind of bitter taste in the throat that, like, how did all these Hispanic people come here and they have all these businesses and we've been blocked out of business loans, business grants, saying in order to flourish and start businesses. I do know that I sit on different cabinets and I'm privy to go to certain meetings. And I went to a meeting where the Hispanic Association stated that they don't have a problem getting seed money to start their businesses. Their problem is sustainability. And they were looking from the state government to help them with money to sustain their businesses. And my argument is your products cater directly to your ethnicity.
That's right.
So why would my tax dollars pay because you're not making enough money? And then I'm
Hmm.
quite sure you've seen the remittance numbers. Their
Yep.
money, whether it's Black immigrants or whether it's Hispanic, goes to their countries.
Yep.
It doesn't stay in
And
our
before we
community,
get into
nor do
that,
they invest
yeah,
in our community.
yep. And before we get into that, because I want to touch on that some more, I'm gonna let Don respond. Go ahead, Don. And I was muted, but you're muted. I can't hear you.
The video that went around that went viral of the policeman zip tying or appearing to zip tie the toddler. I just want to say to the audience that was debunked. That was actually a policeman coming home from work and chasing his toddler around and ending with a playful, "Yes, sir, you're under arrest." So, again, now more than ever, we have to be very discerning because there's a lot at stake. Um, in terms of, I think I forgot the question. In terms of people being put into our neighborhoods, um, we're not seeing uh, those type of conditions in LA or New York either. But in terms of business and just general displacement, it's interesting. Um, but I think there is definitely there's a move to put with city planners to move everyone in close to services to increase the density in our cities. And yes, freedmen are being pushed out, and we don't really quite know how they're coping with that. where they're going. And part of my advocacy work here in Durham is to capture that and be a part of that relocation of those displaced people. And that requires knowing who they are. And so part of the advocacy is, excuse me, is registering those people. So I'm also a part of Freedmen Nation, where we are trying to verify freedmen very strategically, particularly those directly harmed by documented disparities. But in terms of business, all I can say is that there are a couple of major shifts that have to happen, and we're in a transition. You talk about the businesses that existed when you were young. Well, what happened to this wealthless class is that we were not capitalized to the point where we could buy these businesses. That's where we're at. The loss of land, sure, heirs property, but do we have the business to the capital to go and cash out these farms, cash out these businesses, cash out these homes? That's where the need for reparations. So it is just interesting now more than ever. I'm more for federal reparations because the real fight is gentrification, it's displacement. And there are other elements to that displacement, believe it or not: child welfare, child removal from the home, the foster care system. But this serial disruption of our community is what we're dealing with, the lack of capital to anchor in, to buy from our grandmother, to buy right. from the business. So who has the capital?
Absolutely.
And the immigrants.
Yes.
And that's why Patel owns Soul Food Chicken. And that's why Manuel owns Ribs Are Us, and so on and so forth. So that is, but the cultural aspect of it, and the other part of our fight is cultural preservation, and saying to our municipalities, you know, we are a foundational part of America, of the city of Boston, of Durham, of Nashville. And to erase us is to erase the city and our identity. So we're going to have to be to make that case that these cities must invest in us as a legacy, as their own legacy, and to prioritize historical debt and current disparities. So therefore you match the evidence. It's not about emotion.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's about priorities, and that's what we're dealing with. We've been knocked down on the priority list. We need you to look at historical debt, current disparities, and let's close that gap.
Absolutely. And you guys mentioned gentrification. And I wanted to go back there for a second before I take your comment, Antonia. So gentrification in Mexico, they are starting to complain that Americans, especially Black American expats, are going over there. And when they've gone up, they've seen their areas gentrified. So they went on a rampage to protest businesses that have been opened by expats. So they went and they destroyed businesses. They complained that Americans should learn how to speak Spanish, and they were talking about the rising cost. And if Americans were going to come there, they shouldn't come there and complain about the level of noise that happens in the wee hours of the night. They should learn to, as we say, assimilate. And I was like, what bizarro world am I in? But we see that mass immigration or immigration has an impact on the native population. So it's not something that we're making up. And I know that I focus on immigration numbers, but this example just shows how it does have an impact. And I just wanted to put that out there. And then number two, um, Don, I think you mentioned the false narrative about the zip tie. But even the whole situation with the story, they tried to make it sound strange that they raided this building with the Venezuelan gang that was in there. But let's say that you decide to go to a house party, Don, and you're with your people and everybody's hanging out, but someone at that party has an active warrant. They're going to search, question, and detain every single person at that party. So it doesn't matter. So what they did.
How about the fact that no other ethnic group is probably more familiar with that process?
Right, but we were the loudest ones whining. Oh, why is he going after black people? Why are these people detained? They said F those kids. I was like, some of the responses there, I was like, you guys don't realize what's going on? Like you were detained for a few hours. Yeah, that was, not something that you want to go through at 3 in the morning. However, there was weird stuff going on in your building that needed to be addressed. So none of them got charged. Now, another thing that they were complaining about, if they're going after the Tren de la Agua gang, anybody else that had an active warrant, they were arresting too. So like they're dealing with two things at the same time. They're dealing with crime and they're dealing with arresting illegal immigrants. So they're taking the people that have the crimes, they're taking them over to the police, they're turning them in, even though the police are not working with ICE. They have that working relationship with the CPD. So I just wanted to throw those things out. Antonia, you go ahead.
Yeah, so you and I had discussed before, and even with the brothers at United Sons and Daughters and everybody that I work with regards to reparations, when they struck down DEI, our community had a fit. Oh, they're taking away black rights and they took away affirmative action, and now they're trying to, put us back into enslavement. And DEI never had anything to do with us. Period. Nothing. Zero. What we do see the ill effect of DEI in our city and state is every aspect of every business is highly Hispanic. Doctors' offices, legislation offices, legislative aides, the legislators themselves. I just had a meeting with a caucus, just the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, and it's 90% Hispanic. And when we talked to them about, Office of Freedmen Affairs and getting endorsements, their question was, well, why do we need to create another office? You know, can't we just share the resources we have now? And we're like, no, we really want our own, kind of thing. Um, but any industry, whether it be fast food, anything you can think of, is another nationality in our community. And so that's the ill effect of it, as far as I'm concerned, when you speak of how business has changed in our community and how it has been an influx of having to adapt. And so when you're talking to people, sometimes you don't understand what they're saying. I mean, because they do have a broken English um, dialect. However, we're being made to basically assimilate to accommodate their ethnicity or their linguistic challenges, whatever.
Right.
And I find that to be a bit much. When I take my mom to the doctor, I don't want to have to keep repeating myself or keep, asking, what did you say? Or you keep asking me, what did I say? So in the hospital industry, the medical industries, everywhere we look, there's a high number of Hispanics and Haitians that have taken those jobs. And that's caused a further displacement for us. And we already had our displacement. We had the displacement with urban renewal, where our people are physically displaced due to the knocking down of buildings and trying to build a highway and leaving our conditions in our community maybe 2 blocks away, looking like it's a third world country. And when they didn't get to build a highway, they left it that way. Wawa and I grew up seeing this. So our American freedmen are pushed out to all over the state of Massachusetts, Springfield, Worcester, New Bedford, Brockton, in faraway communities because most of those people couldn't afford to live in the city. So that basically changed our voter base, and a lot of people aren't talking about that. We don't have a whole lot of freedmen in the city of Boston or in the surrounding communities because they displaced us. Our gentrification was originally and always had been about white gentrification. Where I live at, white people would have never came here before. They were petrified to come to our quote unquote hood. They were, I mean, scared. I have white people that live across the street. We have bike lanes. We have dog parks now. And so that's to accommodate them. So for us, the Hispanics that or the illegal aliens or even black immigrants that live here, they were already a part of our community, and we grew up with them. I mean, we have strong ties with people who come from every walk of life when you live in the inner city, whether it be Boston, New York, Connecticut, Chicago. However, the piece that is the most um, disheartening for us is when it comes to legislation and when it comes to getting policies in place, those people who sit in those seats aren't us and aren't like us, and they don't cater to us. And so they have no clue what we're talking about when we're asking for specific things for Black Americans because the mind game and the word toss salad and the word gymnastics of Black African American have been played. So now it pertains to anybody. I mean,
Absolutely.
when people in Boston talk, they say Black Bostonians. Well,
Yep.
what's a Black Bostonian? I mean, it's
Wow.
not us.
Well,
So that's how it's different.
I really like what you said there because what we're finding is people want to be grouped with Black Americans, but politically, they don't want to vote on our issues. And we have seen, as Naheem brought up in the forum that we had in DC, that there was a law that was going to be put in place that you could live in the city of New York for 30 days. And once you lived there for 30 days, you could vote in elections. And it got shot down eventually because someone made some noise about it and said, hey, this is going to disrupt our voter power if we allow this to happen. And lo and behold, they were able to stop it. But if they hadn't have stopped it with all the mass immigration that happened in New York and in other places, that voting power would have disappeared. So we have to pay attention to these numbers, and I will get into some numbers as we get into this because I would be remiss if I didn't show you guys any numbers. But Don, you go, and then I'll let you go, Consuelo, because we haven't gotten to you in a while.
Well, I wanted to remark on two things. One, the danger of the narrative being framed as if we are being overtaken by a fascist government. And people should just be aware of that anxiety being stoked, um, and understand the laws that are being executed by ICE, et cetera. So that's just one of the narratives, that people are just going in and swooping up people where they have no cause. And that's not accurate. And there's a lot of videos with people with their hair on fire, even crying, and then things of that nature. I don't think, back to gentrification, which I think is reparations with a G, or why we need reparations, especially, and gentrification is the fight, and it's a culmination of a bunch of forces at work. Um, but we don't talk enough about how high rise apartments, multifamily buildings cause immediate disruptions, just like the 30-day period. But it's just so disheartening and contradictory. The call for affordable housing, and then where the pressures are coming from, and then how we vote to support those pressures, meaning the competition with new people in town for affordable housing, Um, and just the fact that governments really can't really provide that type of housing, that it should really be the market forces coming together to provide housing. But the immediate disenfranchisement that you get when you drop an apartment complex in a or an apartment building, a high rise, they're not complexes, but high rises is just something that is never discussed. You can have a neighborhood or a ward that is predominantly freedmen, and with one building, you bring in people of a totally different socioeconomic strata with different voting patterns. And that's just the common profile of our municipal governments today, which is the people who are running your cities typically don't live there. And one of the sad reasons is because they can't afford to live in the city. And that's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely.
The residents call for affordable housing while at the same time voting for either sanctuary cities or Fourth Amendment protections.
Yeah.
So the disconnect between what it means to be a freedman and how that can impact our policies and protections, the gap is as wide as the Grand Canyon. And then we're faced with, as Anthony has said, people in positions of power. I just met with someone at an HBCU, an assistant chancellor, and I had to ask, so where are you from? Haitian and European.
Yeah.
And this is such a common thing that the Black Chamber of Commerce. I want to start pushing support for a trade association in the Office of Freedmen Affairs. I look them up. Liberian.
Okay.
Um,
That's very interesting.
Listen, this is a force that is bigger than us. We need to lean into our status and adjudicate and press and advocate for protections and resources on that basis. Gentrification is a real force. Development is a real force, and development and immigration are married and having kids. Yeah. And the only thing that's going to stop that is what? Capital. Because how are we going to anchor in place, buy grandma's house? You know what they're going to do? They're going to bring in code enforcement. They're going to tell your grandma, you got 25,000 in repairs that need to be done, or we're going to fine you. So many iterations of that story, all tying back to the lack of wealth. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So the business aspect is something that we need to incorporate into is financing for our business or economic development funds. But we're at the time, I just feel like we have more standing for restitution and federal reparations now that and I think we all are focusing in on locally, and we see, that we need some protections. We need protections, or we're going to be disappeared.
I like that you use that language. I'm gonna let Consuelo go.
Yes, and that's why I'm working more on the federal level, because federal trumps the state, right? Oh, trumps. But anyway, the protections have to come from the federal government. The states are not going to do it. We see it happening. You have individuals that are making sure, and what I've learned, that the immigrants are able to get into our areas. I'll tell you about a scam or something that is going on in Florida. Someone called me and told me about, right? So, what they're doing in Broward County, Miami-Dade, is, there's a great deal of immigrants in that area, whether they're legal or illegal, right? So what they're doing is, it's an inside job. Those politicians know they're supporting their own people. Let's be clear, very clear. If they are immigrants that have come here legally, they're now helping and supporting their illegal people coming here. So what they're doing is, anybody Black, us Black Americans, they know who we are. We have property taxes to pay. If we're having to set up payments of property taxes, then right before your deadline, they're going in and allowing these other companies and people to pay your property tax and then able to take your property. It's against the law, yes. However, this is what they're willing to risk, because there's such an infiltration in the state and local politics that they're willing to go just disregard our laws, because then they think you can't, you're not going to fight us. Right. So, and I've had a housing situation in South Florida where I complained to HUD, and then they had the local area, individual investigate, and I wouldn't let it go because I know or knew that there was something else going on there. Right. So when we talk about what is happening to us, and I'm gonna stay away from the other stuff, but we have a real opportunity here because we do have a sitting administration that is Americans first, and we can weaponize and use that to our advantage, especially with the fighting of the 14th Amendment. But besides of that, as far as, the big gentrification and property taxes, that's another way to get the property, the land. And when I look at certain things, eminent domain, why couldn't we? I mean, we have the federal protections. We can go back and utilize eminent domain. We can go back and utilize, since they want to make gerrymandering a thing, we can make it, utilize it to our advantage, right? We can utilize redlining to our advantage. So that status is very important. Yes, that status is very important. And I know people like their ethnicity term, right?
Right.
However, we have to understand that comes under the status. That doesn't. There's no legislation for that that ethnicity. It has to go to the status of freedmen, and that's on the books. And it's something with the Supreme Court coming up with the ruling on the 14th, the current interpretation, or figuring out what the actual interpretation is. We know what it is.
Yep.
That only leads us or helps us to align our status and holding more power in what we want to do for our communities. So
Absolutely. And we cannot continue to allow people to come here illegally and dilute our voting power by anchoring their children into this country and getting the benefits that we deserve. Antonia, I'm going to let you respond, and then I'm going to share some numbers, and then we'll get some
Sure.
final thoughts going in.
So what I wanted to say is the fact that we have properties here in the city of Boston and probably all over Massachusetts that were taken by eminent domain during our urban renewal. Those properties now sit in vacant lots. And prior to we getting the reparations task force moving, as a person who sat in the community before I became a part of the task force, we tried to get the mayor to block off those properties and put them in escrow to give back as a part of a reparations program. So I found out maybe 2 days ago that the Black immigrants that sit on the city council want those properties to be made into affordable housing, and guess who would then benefit from them? So
mm,
that's been going on forever. So can you imagine your family lost the property through the means that Consuelo was talking about, taxes? Like there's one gentleman's family, he had 100 properties. The highest tax burden he had was for $500, and they took all of his properties by eminent domain or by the fact that he was delinquent on his taxes. They leveled out the property of some of the houses, and that's the parcels of land that the mayor was giving to developers, I think, for like $1, and we tried to stop that. And then now we're finding out that like the black immigrants who are sitting on the city council want to take those properties and make them affordable houses because of our housing stock. We still haven't addressed the issue that that was somebody's home. That was somebody's family generational wealth, a legacy. So this is what we're facing. So I wanted to say that between what Donna and Consuelo was saying, it's not just a scam; it's blatantly disrespectful. And we did have a petition, and we did ask for this process to stop prior to it beginning to be this bad or being in this situation. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is spot on because when we went to visit some of those city council members, I guess they call them counselors instead of city council. But when we went to visit them, that was something that they were fighting so hard for, affordable housing, affordable housing. But at the same time, they're open to all of this mass immigration into their city. How can
And
they
the other
compete?
thing is density.
Yep,
Density is the buzzword. Increasing, putting in infill properties in the
yep,
vacant lots, and it's just complicated. And the Confederate leaning into the freedman status, all of these vacant properties are supposed to belong to us.
yep, yep.
Can I just say
Consuelo?
one
Yep.
statement?
Oh,
We
wait,
never.
let Consuelo, because she
Sure, I'm
had
sorry.
her hand
I just
raised.
want to cap.
Yeah, well, what Antonia was saying, I raised my hand because you all know I work and collaborate with the ladies of Chicago Flips Red. All three of them have stories about their property and what you were just expressing. They bought lots. Now the lots have been taken. Someone's family home has been leveled. So then they didn't pay them, right? Leveled the land, didn't pay them. They have a lawsuit. Others have invested in attempting to build the community, their opportunity zones, and then they won't release them with the TIF. So these are the games that they're playing with our people to confiscate our land and displace us. And I mean, they're immigrants. I can't even do any more than say that they're immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, in these areas, right? Or they're placing them in these areas. Let's put it that way. Because Chicago, we know some of them are us, right? But
Yep.
they're working to do that, and it's sad. It's very sad.
So I just want to clarify something. Working in both Connecticut and Massachusetts, like um, sincerely, since 2018 or 19 on reparations. I mean, me and Dawn had worked on a couple of things, a couple of projects. It was never American freedmen that started the reparations initiatives, like you said before. It was the Pan Africans because HR 40 has been sitting on the table for 30 years with no traction. So they decided to stop these fires in the community. My only thing was if you're going to do reparations and use the legacy of slavery, then you're talking about my ancestors. So I need to be at that table. And I still feel that way. And it was because now we have momentum, we have traction, as Dawn said before. Now there's a lot of behind the scenes sneakiness going on. And it's like very difficult to spend your whole day trying to find the booby traps. I mean, it's literally insane. If you're not at every meeting, if you're not scrubbing every report online, and if you're not following the bouncing ball, you're out of the game. And so when I'm talking to people in the community, I'm like, you have got to get in this game. One or two people cannot do this. It's going to take a collective action for us to get this stuff done. And I beg people, I truly beg people to get involved at whatever level because it's off the Richter scale. I'm saying as far as how much of a concerted effort has been done to block us out. So the federal reparations was handled by the Pan Africans. I'm saying the Cam Howards, the IBW 21, the Knocking and Cobras. They had that under control. They don't even want us to sit at the table. back when we were doing a campaign to have Dr. Darity, who's a leading economist, have his edits put in. We had to do a whole campaign on fix HR 40. They wouldn't even let him sit at the table. They won't even talk to us. And now they call us new Africans in HR 40. So make no mistakes. I think everybody who I've known, Dawn, whatever, since 2013, 14, 15, 16, we all wanted federal reparations. But there's nothing moving at the federal level, nor is there a bill at the federal level other than the same HR 40 that Sheila Jackson Lee's been pumping for 30 years prior to her unaliving. And now Ayanna Presley, who's our congressperson, revived it. There's nothing else out there, and that's a Pan African bill. So we have to be at the table with these local reparations because they are calling us Black Bostonians, people of African descent, African Americans. They weren't recognizing American freedmen. So we blast American freedmen all over the place. And what I encourage people to do is embrace their heritage. This verbiage needs to be used across the nation. And if you're not using your legal status as American freedmen, you're saying to get these policies put in place, you're doing yourself a misjustice. It's not race based, it's a class of people that have a protected status underneath the 13th Amendment as American freedmen, like veterans, like disabled.
Yep.
It's legitimate. You can call yourself Black, African American, whatever you want to call yourself, with your family and your people and your hood. However, if you want to get this legislation done, it has to be through American freedmen. And we've been screaming this through the rooftop for years.
Yep.
And it's we're still not getting the traction from people, and the stuff is still happening. And ironically, mass immigration over the last since 2020, 2021
Yep.
is even more stifling it. And we're not paying attention. We're not complaining. We're not outraged. I'm looking for the
Absolutely.
outrage.
And people should absolutely be outraged because I'm going to share some numbers with you guys real quick about what's actually happening. So let me just share my screen real fast. Okay. So I wanted to share some numbers from FAIR. Um, in New York, and this is based on 2023. So they do the year 2023, they do a report in 2024. They'll do 2024 this year, sometime this year in 2025. But there was an estimated a million illegal aliens living in New York. They had around 370,000 babies. They um they added around 277,000 students to schools. So the average taxpayer was paying an additional 6,800 a year on illegal immigrants. And the state in total spent around 2.1 2.91 billion, almost $3 billion for illegal alien services. All right. Let's go to North Carolina. Don, your state. They're around like there's just a little under 500K in your state, legal aliens. They're having around 170,000 children. 122,000 school-age kids are infiltrating the classroom, and you're paying around 4,700, almost 4,800 in taxes per illegal alien. Okay? And for your state, it was 3.1 billion that was spent toward illegal aliens. Let's keep going. Let's look at Illinois. They have around 630,000 illegal aliens. They're having around 217,000 children. 228,000 of those kids are in local schools. So you're spending around 4,600 per illegal alien. And let's look at the full number. They spent 3.9 billion on illegal aliens in 2023. Let's keep going to Tennessee. Tennessee. Around 162,000 illegal aliens lived in Tennessee in 2023. They had around 56,000 kids. 49,000 of those kids were in public school. So you're paying around 4,400 per illegal alien. and Tennessee spent around $971 million. All right, let's head down to Virginia. So Virginia had around 420,000 illegal aliens. Those aliens had around 144,000 kids. 123,000 of them joined local public schools. And in Virginia, we're paying around like $5,000 per illegal alien, and they spent $2.8 billion in 2023 on illegal aliens. And here's another thing I want to give you guys as a story. So, public schools in Virginia, Northern Virginia, were in the top 10 in the country. But with all this growth in the illegal alien population, we have seen those schools go all the way down. And some of those schools that were in the top 100 are now facing issues with accreditation because they're dealing with all these additional ESL classes. Their test scores are going down because of the language barrier, and they're the students in those actual schools aren't getting the type of education that they would have gotten 20 years ago because the school has to shift their resources to accommodate these new students. Let's go on to Washington, D.C. There's around 38,000 illegal aliens that live in Washington, D.C. They have around 13,000 babies. Around 9,400 are in public schools. And in D.C., you're paying around 7,500 per illegal alien. So all of these resources are going towards illegal aliens. So in DC, they spent around 386 million in 2023 on illegal aliens. But I'm not done because we're not going to look at the breakdown of California, but I just want to give you the final number. California as a state spent 30 billion, almost 31 billion on illegal aliens. Let that sit. Let that sit. And I wasn't gonna do I wasn't gonna forget about you, Antonia. Your state had in 2023 had around 292,000 illegal aliens. They had around 100,000 babies. They had 97,000 of those babies in public schools, and you're paying around 7,300, almost 7,400 per illegal aliens for your taxes. And I said I was going to give you the breakdown for California, but since we're already here, they had around 3 million illegal aliens. They had a million babies, over a million, and over a million are in public schools, and you're paying around 70,000 per illegal alien. There's a lot of money. This is a lot of money. Go ahead, Antonia.
And so while you were doing that and Don was talking, I wanted to see what the stats were. So the number is absolutely correct. With the go back up to Massachusetts, if you don't mind,
Yep.
thank you. With the
Mm-hmm.
amount of illegal aliens that I put in since 2024, I had 2,071,484. Only 1,461 have been deported, and only 44,000 are in deportation court cases in court. You see what
That's
I'm saying? I mean,
fantastic data. Yes,
that
so
is
they're
just
bringing them
off the
in, but they're not taking them out. Yeah, go ahead.
exactly. So can you give me that screen, Mike? I need that slide. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's sad.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's
it is
sad.
sad. So we've been having a discussion tonight about is ICE targeting Black Americans? And I'm going to give each one of you a chance to respond to that. But I'm actually going to go down to Wawa and see if he's available to speak on any of these topics. If not, that is totally fine. You could just give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're available. Give him a second. All right. Well, then I will start with the response to our final question from Don.
Well, I think it's clear that ICE is not targeting Black Americans because that is not their function. Their function is to uh, apprehend people who are here illegally, who have overstayed their visas, etc. And if they happen to come across people who have warrants, then those people are also processed in the system. I think it's unfortunate that what we should really be alarmed at is the fact that these people have been placed in our communities without our full knowledge, unvetted, unvaccinated. I watched the school bus in the afternoon, and I don't know, call me crazy, but I really feel like I'm looking at some 5 foot 25-year-olds getting off the school bus. So I think it's alarming that our representatives have put freedmen in these perilous conditions and left us vulnerable to interaction with federal authorities, particularly given our history of over policing and false arrest. So I would look to my city officials. Heaven forbid I should be arrested or inconvenienced, lose work, time from work because of such a situation. I would look to my city officials for compensation, for accountability. So no, ICE is not targeting us. What happened is that we were targeted by progressive liberals, by the system, to dump these people into our communities, crowd our schools. And then let me end with this: lump them into our statistics to create a self-fulfilling flow of resources that are then redirected to a different community. So that is the just one of the many shames that we are dealing with. But no, ICE is interested in illegals, not Americans with birthright citizenship, aka freedmen. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and thank you for your participation tonight. I'll go next to Consuelo.
Well, yes, I agree with Don. ICE is here to, or in the communities of Memphis or Chicago to retrieve those illegal criminals. They are criminals receiving our resources, and any of those politicians that are harboring them need to be prosecuted. That's federal law, and it only shows that they are going against the law with using our resources and placing them in our community. So to me, that's great evidence for the prosecution. And I agree with them doing whatever they need to do with these politicians. I'm not going to have any empathy or sympathy for them because they're harboring and they're making sure that they give them our benefits, our resources. So with that, I support ICE and I support the ladies or the people of Chicago with what they're doing with ICE and collaborating with them to make sure that they are removing the criminals out of their communities. Now, I know that unfortunately some of us may get caught up in that again with the warrants and things of that nature, but we know how we can help them in the system. But we're not going to sacrifice our own to help the others in the system. You see where I'm going?
Yes.
So yes, I do not think ICE is there to round us up and deport us. That's not true. We're not undeportable. So with that, yes, I support any and everybody that says ICE, come on in here and let's round up these criminals. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that you specifically landed the plane to let the people that will eventually view this video is that this forum is that we are not next. We are actually citizens of this country and we receive the full benefits. What we are seeing of ICE detaining and eventually deporting illegal immigrants is nothing like slavery. I have a I know somebody that came to me and they asked me a question. They asked me if they would actually, if we look at history and see if what we're doing with illegal immigrants was wrong and was wrong like we saw with slavery, because slavery was legal. Slavery was legal. But there were people that bucked against that law. Will we revisit history and look at deportations at this scale and decide in history that we were wrong? And I told them absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I hope that people stop listening to these politicians that say that we are next, because we are not next. And Anthony, I'm not going to make you wait much longer. I just have one quote because we're talking about it that I want to include. So this also came from Brian Mullins. So he said, being black means we go from light skin to dark as heck. Um, Dominicans, Venezuelans, Haitians, etc., all look like us. So that's also Brandon's fault. ICE wouldn't be here bothering any citizens if the illegals were not involved. Just like the LGBTQ, women's issues, etc., we are all guilty by association. We didn't ask for the illegals or for them to be removed. It is always in our communities, though. Now, I'll have to push back against that we didn't ask them to be removed, because some of us did ask for them to be removed. But we did not, no one asked for them to be placed in our communities.
That part, that part.
Yeah. And this is the whole reason why I wanted to have this forum, because I saw that Don, you were making comments, Antonia was making comments, I was seeing comments on social media about this issue. And I think people get amnesia. It's just like me and my soon to be five kids. It's like some people, they have babies and it's easy for them and they glow and everything's great, and then some people it's not as easy. But it seems like every time I forget how hard it is during the pregnancy stage, and I get like it's like I throw it into the sea of forgetfulness. And I think this is what people have done with what has happened with Chicago and the busing. They've thrown it into the sea of forgetfulness that they put all these people here, and these people have not always been here. And they have disrupted our systems. They've disrupted our housing market. They've disrupted a lot of different things. So I'll land there. Antonia, go ahead and take us home.
So for me, the the shaming of Black Americans and the "you're gonna be next" thing is the most disrespectful thing that I find. We're day one citizens. There's nowhere to deport us to. We have no other home. And I feel that by shaming us into this black and brown and black coalition that doesn't exist, it's just
Mhm.
absolutely ridiculous. So what I found, whether it be on Twitter's live spaces, not well, Twitter sometimes because I'm not really on Twitter that much, but TikTok live spaces is, you guys are gonna be next. You should team up with us, and if you don't team up with us, you're gonna be next. And so there's this shaming. There's this, you owe it to us. Um, they're doing to us what they did to you. No, they brought us and they kidnapped us, human trafficked us from Africa, and you guys benefited that Africans because you sold us into slavery, and that's why we're here. We didn't choose to come here, number one. Number two, we don't have a home to go back to. We're not remitting money into Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados for retirement homes. So when you say that to us, it's not a flex. It's very disrespectful. And so there is no black and black coalition because we see that when we're looking at our legislators and our city councilors and our, senators and Congress people who don't respect us and don't acknowledge us for the issues that we need assistance on, and you're putting yourself and your ethnicities, your culture, your group first. And I'm going to say this: we asked for Office of American Freedmen Affairs for the last couple of years. Guess what? They took our motto and they created an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs in the city of Boston. And then they changed it because they heard us talking about the Supreme Court and race-based initiatives are unconstitutional, and they changed it to the cultural affairs. So we don't have culture. We're not a part of that.
Or the
So they just
or the Office of New Americans, like they did in Chicago.
They have the immigration office, the Office of New Americas, and over the last year and a half, since we've been talking about the Office of Freedmen Affairs, they created in the city of Boston the Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs. For her, was talking about the Supreme Court and the race-based, initiatives are unconstitutional, and they changed it to the Office of Cultural Affairs. But we're not a part of that. So every time I look around at initiatives in our community, they don't speak of us at all.
Yeah.
And so our tax dollars are being depleted, going into all these different programs, initiatives for all other ethnicities and not us. My problem is when we get ready to talk about reparations, I sit on the City of Boston's task force. We could be making recommendations in the next 6 months. You're burning out our reparations money. And you're poking the bear, which is Trump, la 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 la, we're with immigration, we're not going to help you. And so he's not giving you any federal dollars. So you're burning out our resources, our pools of money that you have. So by the time we come to you, you're going to be bankrupt. Is that what you're going to tell us? There's no money, there's no funds available. While all these other illegal aliens are now settled, you gave them $30,000. They have houses, cars, they have businesses. So it's a trick bag to me. And that's why I'm so focused on empowering our people to speak up, to get into civic engagement, to get into reading reports and understanding what's going on, even if I have to sit next to them and help them, because we need all hands on deck.
That's right. That's right. Really and in our next forum, I would like to delve into the education side. I know that some of our panelists from Chicago were not able to come today. We'll get them to come online next time. But I just really want to thank this panel for your participation in this because we've really delved into this and dispelled this narrative. And I think as we continue to push back, that we're going to really bless a lot of people because they're going to be able to look at the situations and really see, hey, what policies do we need to put in place? It's good that we're dispelling the narrative, but what are the next steps? Well, the next step at the federal level is the legislation. The legislation like HR2, like E-Verify, that pushes back and prevents these pendulum swings in immigration numbers from one administration to another. We're open and then we're closed. We're open and then we're closed. And then all of a sudden, we're undoing the law of different executive orders that presidents have put into place, but we haven't put any long-term legislation in place. And I think that as we're pointing out these issues with education, with housing, with voting power, we have to look at these long-term legislative policies that are allowing that haven't been put into place that are allowing all these people to come here and infringe upon our benefits. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Can I just make one more statement that I want to make? We're not just looking at illegal aliens that came across the border. We're looking at people who have been here for 20 and 30 years and 40 years and never got their paperwork right. We have a situation here in Boston where there's like a couple of businesses that are ethnically inclined who now all of a sudden are in business because they're black Americans, and they've been deported.
Yeah.
So how did you get a business? How have you been in business and your paperwork is not correct? And now you're crying, asking for donations and asking for assistance because your paperwork is not incorrect, or you're asking us to coalesce or to collaborate with you to free Willie, let's just say. I'm saying, or, it's sad. It's like
It
you've been
is.
here all this time and your paperwork's not together,
It
and you have a
is.
business in our community that doesn't cater to us specifically, and you don't respect us, and you don't know our history. So those are the things I think of. I just wanted to add that real quick.
I'm glad that you added that because you said something earlier too, where in Boston, because of your history with immigrants, that you guys gotten so used to being around people that are not even legal, being around all these people with cultural differences. And I think that's part of the reason why the enforcement is so hard for people because they've normalized people living as pseudo Americans and then looking at them and saying, you're just as American as apple pie. And it's not true. It's not true. People need to escape that factual fallacy because it's not correct. And we have to have limits to the amount of people that are coming to the United States because there are consequences to having all these people here. And as we continue to have these discussions, I think that we'll be able to elaborate more on that and continue to push. But it's been a pleasure. Is there anything else that anybody would like to include before we wrap up?
Can I
Yeah,
just say one
Oh, hold
thing?
on.
You
Let
go,
let
you go,
Consuelo
you go
go.
first.
Oh yeah,
I,
take it.
I just want to say, when you talk about policy, right? We know now going forward, we can make sure we're writing policy specifically for us under Freedmen. And I think we have to make sure our people understand that. And that will help us help ourselves in a way, whether it's state, local, or late, local, state, or federal, whatever bills you're pushing, make sure you go back and put in freedmen. And if they ask what is a freedman, you can define it in the bill, right? And that will help us. And along with that, I'm all about going back and re-amending or amending some of the affirmative action bills and policies and making them freedmen specific. Yeah.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Antonia.
I just want to clarify something. So, because like we are in a dense population, we have so many people, and we're always called the melting pot. We don't know who's illegal, who's not legal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we grew up with everybody being in our community because we do have skyscrapers, we do have high rises, we do have projects, we do have apartment buildings that are 6 and 7 floors, whatever. So it didn't become a problem or anything to recognize until these illegals came across the border that you have to, look at somebody's, second guess, are you a citizen or not? But we were always told that if you were illegal, you don't get benefits. But that's been a lie
Yeah, it's been a lie
because
for a
we
long
see
time.
now that they have been getting benefits. They have been getting Section 8. They have been getting food stamps. They have been getting
Medicare.
housing. They've been getting this stuff all along and medical care.
Yep.
I'm saying they've been getting services. And so now that's the problem. They have normalized them getting services under these policies that have been putting in place. And one more thing, the city council in our city tried to have a hearing maybe like a week ago to get municipal IDs just for illegal aliens. We have a mass ID, but to circumvent this thing with ICE, now they want a municipal ID just for illegal aliens. Why? So every time I turn around, it's like, and if I don't follow this stuff and I'm not at the hearings and listen to the meetings, you miss it. They have driver's license in New York. They gave them driver's license as illegal immigrants. Why?
Yeah. So
It
they
doesn't
can
make
vote.
any sense.
So they can vote.
So that's what I wanted to say to close up. But no, black people, Americans, American freedmen are not being targeted by ICE. The people that are black that are being affected are black immigrants that are
Yes.
being deported. There is collateral damage by coming into the community, and there's black people there. If you have warrants, like Don said, that's a part of being collateral damage. But other than that, they're not looking for American freedmen. And no American freedman that I know of has been deported or been arrested as a result of being an illegal alien.
You said it. You said it. Go ahead, Don.
So, yeah, in closing, to bring it back to the topic of immigration, I think as freedmen, we should understand what we should be pushing back on, what we have the rights to push back on. We should be demanding e-verify, especially in the deployment of federal funding. Anytime you see a shovel hit the ground, any type of program that's deployed, I think we would be well served to focus on compliance with Davis-Bacon, compliance with the 1866 Civil Rights Act. That kind of gives a framework for contracts and the concept of penalizing municipalities or people that do not. But I think that for tangible outcomes, that the way we immigration restriction helps our community as well as our country is for us to present as freedmen with birthright citizenship, asserting the historical debt, the current disparities, the prioritization of legacy populations, including the white populations who are also impacted if we want to be generous.
That's right.
But essentially, the way our contribution to placing restrictions or moratoriums is also calling on that. It is also attaching our history since emancipation of pushing back against immigration because of the formation of unions to keep us out. If we hearken back to back of the hiring line and Roy Beck. So, but if we're realistic about the Black American community, we are a community that leads with love and compassion. And so the way in which we discuss this, I think we have to talk about immigration and enforcement of restrictions in terms of looking out for your family.
That's right.
Securing, mothers, do you not want a future for your children? Securing your neighborhoods, securing resources for your family to thrive. It basically is a more constructive approach for us, and it is tying it to the Constitution that kind of allows us, and focusing on the Constitution, the historical debt, the current disparities speak for themselves. But immigration is a threat because development is a threat, and development and immigration go hand in hand. Freedmen pressure municipalities for quotas, for work quotas. Most of them actually have those in place. It's at least 10%. But look to the Davis-Bacon. So we can do our part that intersects with what we're seeking, which is tangible benefits and return on the tax dollars that we pay that are currently being diverted to say, look at these disparities. We need to do something about how resources are allocated. And we are freedmen. The Constitution compels you to eliminate these disparities and go forward with that. But understanding that our erasure is tied to immigration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, we will land. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me on a Friday night. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll expand upon this next time. Bye for now.
Good evening, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Long holiday. Bye-bye.
Bye.